Someone in your tribe knows something you do not. They know where it comes from. They know how to get it. And they are not going to tell you. That information is worth more than the object itself. This is the oldest business model in human history. Not farming, not barter, not currency. The deliberate control of knowledge about where forbidden or rare things come from, and the quiet, dangerous exchange of those things outside the sanctioned channels of the group. Before money existed, before laws existed, before writing existed, your ancestors had already invented the black market. And it ran on two things that have never changed: forbidden desire and information asymmetry. Let us start with what was forbidden. In hunter-gatherer and early sedentary societies, the distribution of certain goods was not left to individual choice. Specific substances, objects, and materials were controlled by shamans, by elders, by the dominant figures whose authority depended in part on their exclusive access to things that seemed powerful or sacred. To trade these things freely, outside the sanctioned ritual context, was not just a social violation, it was a threat to the entire power structure of the group. Archaeologist Brian Hayden, whose work on feasting and competitive exchange in prehistoric societies has reshaped how researchers think about early economics, documented a consistent pattern across dozens of traditional cultures: the most politically potent goods, psychoactive plants, rare pigments, fermented beverages, specific animal parts with ritual significance, were almost always subject to some form of access control. Not everyone could obtain them. Not everyone could use them openly. The right to consume certain things was itself a marker of status, and that right was guarded, which means that anyone who wanted those things and did not have the status to obtain them openly had exactly one option: they had to find another way. This is the origin of the prehistoric black market, not criminality in the modern sense, a structural response to scarcity manufactured by power. When the people at the top of a social hierarchy control access to the things that alter consciousness, signal status, or connect the user to something felt as sacred or extraordinary, the people at the bottom develop informal, hidden networks to obtain those things anyway. Your dopamine system does not check with the shaman before it decides what it wants. Now layer in the second engine: information asymmetry. This is an economics term. It means a situation where one party in a transaction knows something the other does not, and that knowledge gap is itself a source of power and profit. In prehistoric trade networks, information asymmetry was not accidental, it was cultivated. Consider obsidian. Obsidian is a volcanic glass that produces an extraordinarily sharp cutting edge, sharper than steel when properly knapped. It was one of the most valuable tool materials in the prehistoric world, and its geological sources are highly localized. You cannot find obsidian everywhere. It comes from specific volcanic sites, and those sites are distributed unevenly across landscapes that could span thousands of kilometers. Researchers, including Colin Renfrew, the archaeologist who pioneered the systematic study of prehistoric exchange networks, documented obsidian distribution patterns that are genuinely astonishing. Obsidian from sources in Anatolia, present-day Turkey, has been recovered at sites across the Levant, Cyprus, and into North Africa. Obsidian from sources in the Aegean appears at sites hundreds of kilometers inland. These materials were moving across enormous distances, through multiple hands, long before any formal trade institution existed. But here is the detail that matters for our purposes. The people who controlled access to obsidian sources did not advertise their location. The value of being the person who knew where the obsidian came from and who could obtain it depended entirely on other people not knowing. This was not paranoia, it was rational economic behavior. The moment everyone knows where the source is, the information advantage disappears, the monopoly collapses, the profit evaporates. So the knowledge was guarded, passed within families, within trading partnerships, within lineages that built their social position on the ability to supply something others could not obtain for themselves. The object moved, the knowledge of its origin did not. This pattern repeated across materials and across continents. Shells from coastal populations appear in inland burial sites thousands of years old. Not because the inland people traveled to the coast, but because there were intermediaries. Traders who knew the route, who had the relationships, who moved the goods through networks that were deliberately opaque to anyone outside them. Ochre, The red iron-based pigment, documented at archaeological sites across Africa and Europe going back more than 100,000 years, shows the same pattern. Specific ochre deposits produce pigment with particular qualities: color saturation, particle size, mineral composition. Andrew Sherratt's research and subsequent work in sourcing studies have shown that prehistoric people were not simply using whatever ochre was locally available. They were seeking out specific sources, transporting specific varieties, and the people who controlled access to high-quality ochre deposits were not sharing that information freely. Now combine these two engines, forbidden desire and information asymmetry, and you get something that looks remarkably like a functioning underground economy. So let us reconstruct a specific moment. You are at a site in the Natufian culture of the ancient Levant, approximately 12,000 years ago, a period when some groups were beginning to settle into semi-permanent camps while still relying on hunting and gathering. The Natufian people show early evidence of social stratification. Some burials are more elaborate than others. Some individuals are interred with objects that mark them as having held special status in life. In this community, access to certain psychoactive plants that alter consciousness, produce visions, or induce states that the culture interprets as contact with the spirit world, is controlled by specific ritual specialists. These are not recreational substances in the cultural framework of this group. They are sacred technology, and their use is not permitted outside of sanctioned ritual contexts overseen by the people who hold that authority. But your brain does not operate on cultural frameworks. It operates on dopamine. And the person 2 camps over, who made a journey last season and came back with something that grows 3 days' walk to the east, has quietly let it be known, through the right channels, to the right people, that they can obtain it again. What do you give? You give whatever you have that they want: a specific flint tool, a particular kind of dried food, labor, information. The exchange happens without witnesses, without the knowledge of the ritual specialists whose authority depends on controlling exactly this kind of access. The transaction is invisible to the official economy of the group. This is the first black market transaction, and it is not fundamentally different from any black market transaction that has happened since. The neurological architecture driving it is identical across all of human history. Your brain's reward system, built on dopamine pathways that evolve to motivate pursuit of things that feel worth pursuing, does not distinguish between sanctioned and unsanctioned desire. It does not evaluate the political implications of wanting something. It generates craving, and craving finds supply. Researcher Kent Flannery, whose decades of work on the archaeology of early complex societies in Mesoamerica and the Near East, documented the emergence of what he called prestige goods networks, informal exchange systems operating alongside or beneath official redistributive economies, showed that these shadow networks appear consistently in the archaeological record wherever social stratification begins to develop. Wherever some people have more access than others, informal channels emerge to redistribute what the official channels withhold. This is not a modern pathology. It is a structural feature of human social organization that appears to be as old as hierarchy itself. And here is the modern mirror. Every black market that exists today, for substances, for information, for access to things that official systems restrict, is running on the same 2 engines your ancestors used. Forbidden desire, manufactured by whoever controls the official channels, and information asymmetry, cultivated by whoever knows where the supply is and is not telling. The global black market for goods and services is estimated in the trillions of dollars annually. The dark web exists because information asymmetry can be recreated digitally. Premium access, insider knowledge, exclusive networks. These are the legal versions of the same architecture. The person who knows where the obsidian comes from. The person 2 camps over who made the journey and came back with something. The goods have changed. The networks are digital now. The legal status varies by jurisdiction, but the transaction, the quiet exchange, outside the sanctioned channels, driven by a craving the official economy refuses to supply, is 12,000 years old at minimum. Probably much older. Someone in your world knows something you do not. They know where it comes from. They know how to get it. And that knowledge, right now, in the oldest possible sense, is worth more than the object itself.